Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And welcome once again to another edition of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen. And this is another interesting week. Literally, as I prepared to record this episode on Thursday, a lot of crazy news came down the pike with one Kazuchika Okada apparently leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling at the end of this month, January 31st. So we will touch on all of that here in a moment. As always, let's get this out of the way. At Juicy Steen on Twitter, Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, juicysteen.podbean.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. And if you do listen to this on iTunes, please drop a rating and review. 5 stars would be greatly appreciated to further this show. But yeah, let's get around to it here with Okada and where he might end up. This is going to be kind of a minimal episode. Just going to kind of touch on Raw, Dynamite, some in-between stuff, some stuff from TNA, some out-of-the-ring stuff. And, you know, I kind of wanted to drop something real, kind of timely, kind of random, but really cool nevertheless. Next week should be the Royal Rumble prediction show. So that'll be, you know, its own episode and what have you. There should be a SIP series episode coming out in the next couple of weeks. I don't know exactly when, but it will be taking place. And an episode of Triple Threat Theater should be recorded also very, very soon. But at the end of this episode, right around like the last 5 or 6 minutes of this episode, you will hear audio from 10 years ago, where I interviewed then Kevin Steen before the Ring of Honor show that happened at the David L. Lawrence Convention Center in 2014. That is 10 years ago next week, which is pretty damn crazy to think about. I interviewed him and Kevin Kelly in the same night. The Royal Rumble was the following night, as a lot of you in the Pittsburgh area are well aware. But I interviewed both Kevin Steen and Kevin Kelly for a collegiate newspaper that I had I ended up writing a story about, which just a really cool thing that I got to do was interview those two guys. I remember seeing the Briscoes walk in. I remember Matt Hardy walking in the building. Kevin Steen, of course, walking in the building. And I got to interview him and Kevin Kelly, and at the moment, it was one of the best moments in my journalistic career to that level, to get some backstage access to interview such talent as Kevin Steen, who is, has been a stalwart now in WWE for well over 7-8 years. I mean, this interview took place in January of 2014. And, I mean, by the following May, he was defeating John Cena clean in the center of the ring. So, just crazy timing on that. But that 1-year anniversary is coming up next week. So, I decided to dig, and I found the audio of the Kevin Steen interview. It's 6 minutes. It's quick. We just touch on, Ring of Honor coming to the actual downtown area of Pittsburgh, how Royal Rumble and Ring of Honor on the same weekend really help the market in Pittsburgh. Again, this is 5 years before AEW, so having 2 wrestling shows in the same town for a weekend, and it wasn't WrestleMania, was pretty cool and pretty unique, and it was a hell of a weekend in that regard. And it's just funny how all those things, CM Punk's final WWE appearance for almost 10 years happened the following night as that recording took place. And just the timing of it was crazy. And I just couldn't be happier that I got to interview him and Kevin Kelly. Now, the Kevin Steen audio will be the one being played at the end of this, like I said. You'll notice I definitely seem to have been a little under the weather during that portion of the weekend. It was a long, long weekend. But, man, I trudged through it. I had a great time interviewing him, and I cannot wait to drop that here at the end of this episode for you guys to enjoy. But until then, let's get into some Raw and SmackDown, some AEW, some outside the ring, some inside the ring. Raw was pretty significant for the Jinder Seth Rollins match, but Seth Rollins, of course, retained, and that was pretty much all she wrote. However, Seth Rollins, seemed to be injured. Seemed to injure his knee towards the end of that match, and it is still pretty uncertain as to the severity of the injury. Hopefully it's not too severe. Hopefully he can continue to perform, whether that be at the Rumble pay-per-view, which I don't believe he has a match. But if he has to wrestle a Chamber, hopefully, I have no idea. There's no severity. There's nothing really discussed. It was just he got injured. He's not working the house shows this weekend. So we'll see. But hopefully he's able to wrestle and perform as we move closer to WrestleMania. We are a week away from the road to WrestleMania being started, So, but quite the interesting night. The Hook Jinder thing from last week then bled into this week, and the Raw rating didn't do too great. The competition was pretty stout, though, with the NFL playoffs. The wild card Monday Night Football game was on, so that was a tough hill to climb. And Hook and Samoa Joe, and we'll discuss that here in a little bit, from Dynamite. That match actually helped AEW get their best ratings in over 3 months. They were number one all across cable. So congratulations to them. Hopefully they can continue that. We go back and forth with this show's doing great, that show's not doing great. What's a draw? Who is in a draw? What kind of stuff is Tony Khan talking about? Is Jinder really a draw? Don't hinder Hook. What? There's so much going on from last week that it looks like AEW had a very successful week in the ratings, so that's good for them. And WWE gets to have their go-home show for Royal Rumble unopposed by football for the first time in 3 weeks. So that's exciting for them. So we'll see what happens with the Seth Rollins injury as we touch back on that. We had Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre in a promo segment. First of all, CM Punk will be face-to-face with Cody next Monday on Raw. That'll be must-see TV. Again, for the go-home of Raw for Royal Rumble, should be fantastic and some fascinating, intriguing TV for sure. But Drew McIntyre, I think I said it last week, one of the most improved guys on the mic, and definitely one of the top guys on the mic right now. Talking about finishing stories, talking about, second chances, and both those guys specifically being two guys who, were a part of WWE, grew up in WWE, left WWE, but by the time they came back, they were like they were so much better and deeper as characters and individuals, and just everything was just better about them when they eventually made the comeback to WWE. And it's just pretty wild, that these two guys now seemingly are on a path. One of them is going to finish a story. I would presume it's not Drew McIntyre, but, who knows? The Royal Rumble, though, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Cody Rhodes, Gunther. There's so many different little stories that, are up in the air in regards to the Royal Rumble, in that, no one's a clear-cut winner. I don't know. Outside of CM Punk, it's either CM Punk or Cody Rhodes. I would be shocked if Cody or Punk do not win the Rumble for the men this year. If Cody goes back-to-back, or if Punk wins his first ever, I just don't know. But it seems like those two are, like, by far the favorites to take that. But there's so many other little nuances. If Punk wins, what happens? Does he go after Rollins? If Rollins is still champion, does Punk want to go against Roman? Does Cody have a problem with that if he does? Is Roman even going to be champion by Mania? There's so much up in the air. And that's why I think this Royal Rumble has a lot more intrigue than years past, for sure. Let's get into some other stuff from Raw. JD McDonough and Dominic Mysterio lost to DIY. Looks like DIY is trying to get closer to the undisputed tag titles held by the other members of the Judgment Day. I'm still hoping, maybe DIY does get the job done at some point. Kind of, maybe not starting, but potentially beginning to fray the Judgment Day as a group. And then we can get that Creed Brothers DIY tag title match at WrestleMania, which would be fantastic. Some other stuff we had here. So Gunther returns, and he wants to win the Royal Rumble. Look, if Gunther wins the Royal Rumble, that'd be crazy. He's already IC champion. You could do, I guess you could do title for title, but I think it's more if Gunther would just win whatever title he would go after, and just drop the IC and continue his run and still be, I guess undefeated with it. But to me, I think the move is Gunther goes in the Rumble. He takes out 6, 7, 8 guys. A lot of talent gets dumped over from Gunther. And then you get a guy who might challenge for the IC. So, to me, let's have Chad Gable throw out Gunther. Maybe you have Lesnar have a one-on-one with Gunther in the middle of the ring. Maybe Lesnar's the guy that throws him out. But whoever throws out Gunther, I just think, that should be who potentially challenges for the IC title next. And I am not opposed to having Brock Lesnar challenge for the IC title, because it's not below Gunther, and Lesnar never won the title. And I just think it's there's no weight class. It's a Haas title right now. So let's have Gunther and Brock Lesnar for the IC. You want to have a high-profile Intercontinental Championship match. I don't see how much more high-profile it can get than Brock Lesnar. So we shall see about that. Let's go a little further into Raw. Rhea Ripley, who seems to potentially be going against whoever wins a Women's Rumble, I would say. It might be Becky Lynch, but here's my... Excuse me. Here is my thoughts on this Rhea thing. Rhea should have a prime match at WrestleMania, right? However, to me, I think she should still have a huge spot at the Elimination Chamber show. Now, if you do a chamber match that she is in and defends her title and mows down 5 other combatants on her home turf, that would be fantastic. Or you could have someone win the Rumble and challenge her for Mania, and in between they do. I don't know. The Rumble thing makes me think it's going to be Bayley winning the Rumble and then going against Io Sky. But I think Becky Lynch, who seems to want to have a shot at Rhea, that's easily a WrestleMania main event, but I could easily see it happening in Perth. You want a high-profile match to sell the hometown girl going, defending her title on home soil? Why not against Becky Lynch? Why not against the Man? The Eradicator versus the Man. I'd be in for that for sure. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of stuff they have cooking. It's just, with the once the Rumble's over, we can kind of we can really kind of hash out who should be where, what type of match, because we know that there's going to be probably a men's and women's chamber match in Perth. But what will they be for? Is it going to be for a shot at the title? Is it going to be for a title? That remains to be seen. But, Rhea saying that she wants Becky to win at WrestleMania, or to win at the Royal Rumble, to face her at WrestleMania, almost makes me think that someone, maybe Rhea does, costs Becky at the Rumble, and Becky's like, look, let's have a match in Perth. So I have no idea what is really cooking in the women's division, but it sucks that Charlotte's not around. Charlotte and Rhea had that amazing match last year at WrestleMania, and I keep seeing Charlotte in her rehab stints and her photos and videos of her rehabbing, and I cannot help but think of John Cena in 2008. Well, 2007 into 2008, where he was going to be out for 8 months, and he came back in like 3 at the Royal Rumble. Do I anticipate Charlotte Flair returning at the Royal Rumble? No. But I could see her getting involved in some way, maybe at WrestleMania, if she's somehow healed by then, if they kind of kayfabed an ACL and maybe it's just a meniscus thing, or I don't know. You never know anymore. It's in my bio. Everything is a work. So unless you work in WWE or you are Charlotte Flair, we don't know how severe the injury really is. So that remains to be seen. So I'm not sure if I said DIY versus the Creed brothers for the tag titles would be great. And if that happens, you would assume that the tag titles would be off of Priest and Finn. But I don't know. Is there a chance we get, Finn and Priest versus Dom and McDonough? Does McDonough get ostracized and, that happens? Is there a chance? Because we've been seeing, it's being weird. Now, it could just be to set up Truth, but it seems that Damian Priest is not only tolerant of R-Truth, but he's kind of favoring him in a way, and because he's kind of doing dirty work for him. If Priest kind of does that, is there any way we could get Damian Priest, R-Truth, as a team versus, Finn and Dom? I don't know. I think the money there, honestly, is Priest and Balor in like a Hell in a Cell. Whether that's for the briefcase or what, I don't really know. But I don't know. If the tag titles aren't with Priest and Balor come WrestleMania, I think they got to have some sort of split, some sort of singles match against each other. I'm not sure Dom, McDonough, or R-Truth really are going to get involved in that, but remains to be seen. Like I said, we're so far away from road to WrestleMania season. I mean, it's here, but it's just so up in the air. It's very confusing. It's the best potential, thing to have is the confusion, the speculation, the guessing, the intrigue of what's going to happen at the Rumble and Chamber and Mania. But I still think that chalk is going to prevail in the Rumble for Punk and either Punk or Cody. So as much as I say that there's so much intrigue and we have no idea, I'm still leaning towards options that are pretty obvious. But like I said, you never know. Yeah, so Jinder and Seth had their match. Rollins gets injured. We don't know. We really have no idea how severe it is, but it has been the problematic knee. So regardless, I'm sure he's probably going to go all the way to Mania, get the title off of him, take time off, have surgery, get his knee fixed, get some rehab, maybe come back for SummerSlam. But move forward with Punk, move forward with what's going on. I just hope that Rollins can make it to WrestleMania, quite frankly. It just seems like so many things are happening to hurt Seth Rollins right now instead of helping him in that regard. So let's get to some Dynamite. I don't believe... Actually, let's do one more thing in regards to WWE. Grayson Waller and LA Knight were on a local, Good Morning show in Australia, I believe, this past week. And like I said with my bio, everything is at work. And some people are saying that it could have been a work, and I would not be shocked if it was a work. But work or not, Grayson Waller got very fed up with one of the hosts and just another couple of characters, on-screen characters, on this program, and for saying it's fake and kind of challenging him. Hey, let's do this. And he props to Grayson Waller for standing behind kayfabe in 2024. And he's like, look, the police would be called if I came over there and punched you. Like, it would not be some worked punch. It would be serious. And I've been very praiseworthy of Grayson Waller over the past couple of months. He's held his own on the mic. He held his own with John Cena at Money in the Bank last year. He's really done well. And his in-ring work is great as well. He's one of the better heels that WWE has right now. And as an ambassador for not only Australia, but for WWE, I loved his stance defending kayfabe, defending pro wrestling on a public show and a forum like that. It was very reminiscent. Older fans would recall David Schultz famously having a run-in. I think that might have been covered on... was that covered on Dark Side of the Ring? I'm not sure. But, that incident with 2020, you also, even more famously in WWE realm, Vader, when he and Undertaker went to Kuwait, and Vader was violent and physical with a host of a show there, which got him in a lot of international trouble. And that was when kayfabe was at an all-time high of protection, and you got to make sure kayfabe is really taken care of. So yeah, I just this moment just really had me applauding, and not only applauding Grayson Waller, but I give a lot of props to LA Knight, who has been in WWE for a little bit now and has had one of the best years for a guy kind of out of nowhere, and kind of taking a back seat to the hometown kid, having this moment on air. But when it got real, quote unquote, and Waller kind of had his little interaction, LA Knight hung back, didn't say anything, let Waller have his moment and hash it out on his own, and both were just very well done. They did a very good, solid job at whatever you want to call it, whether it's protecting kayfabe or working. I thought they both did a great job, and if you're a TV host and let's say this was not a work, have you not been clued in on what pro wrestling is, or are you so diluted in your, vacuum world that you cannot fathom that people actually enjoy pro wrestling to where you want to mock it on your show that you're promoting pro wrestling on, So if it's not a work, I just don't understand how in 2024 you could see pro wrestling and actively call it out like that, especially when you're promoting it and you're trying to sell tickets to a show that is going to be incredibly successful, ideally, for the market, the country, the continent, for God's sake. So if it wasn't a work, shame on those guys, but props to Grayson Waller for sticking up. And LA Knight for, hanging tough. He had his back. He had Waller's back regardless. And if it was a work, even better. They all worked well. So props to them. That was kind of outside the ring. Let's go to the Dynamite side of things. Dustin Rhodes was unsuccessful in the TNT title match against Christian. But, whatever. We had, this was so nice. Mark Briscoe. They come out on Dynamite. This is exactly 1 year since his brother passed away tragically. And came out and was like, look, it's been a year. And whenever, his daughters were in the vehicle with him when the accident occurred, and they told his one daughter, you might not walk again. And then Mark just got real hyped, real animated, and said, look, they can. Like, he brought him, I think, but one of them, the one taller kid, I'm not sure who he was. I don't know if it was a brother or a cousin or some sort of relative in the Briscoes, but I think the two daughters were there. Unless that's his son. I'm really not sure, unfortunately. But, so they all came out, though, and hugged and embraced, and it was a great moment for Mark and the family. And then they played a little remembrance video for Jay, about 1.5 minutes long. So it's a really nice segment. And if you didn't get emotional, watch something else. It's just, wrestling's not for you. Deonna Purrazzo had a solid match. Beat Anna Jay. She's in here. She's doing a great job. The women's division in AEW could really be picking up some steam if Mercedes Moné comes aboard. So, my goodness. Purrazzo, Britt, Toni Storm, potentially Mercedes Moné, among plenty of other talent. Jamie Hayter, Sky Blue, Julia Hart. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But Toni Storm just berating Deonna on commentary, and so good. She's so good. So give me Deonna and Toni Storm. I don't know if that'll take place at Revolution or earlier, but I'm here for it. And I say that, yet Revolution's the 3rd day of March, so we're about 1.5 months away from that show. Sting's final match seems to be against the Young Bucks. However, it seems that Sting and Darby might want the tag titles off of Ricky Starks and Big Bill. Whether they win the titles and then lose them to the Bucks at the pay-per-view, or they win the titles and beat the Bucks and Sting retires as champion. I don't know what the move is, but we'll see how that goes forward. Private Party and Top Flight had a fun match. Private Party gets the win. It was a spot fest for sure, but that's what you want out of all 4 of those talent, if we're being really honest here. What other stuff did we want to... okay, so let's get into this. The main event, Hook, Samoa Joe. This match was very hyped by Tony Khan, and we all knew that the Hook Jinder of it all happened last week. Jinder had his shot, lost. Hook gets his shot. He gets thrown around. He gets muscle bustered, kicked out at 1. Don't tell Jim Cornette that. And ultimately, Samoa Joe takes out Hook, by submission. But Hook still got some trash talk in. He got hit with another muscle buster that he did not kick out of. Hangman made a save. Swerve came through the crowd, and Joe, Swerve, and Hangman all had a 3-person interaction to close out Dynamite, which, are we getting a triple threat at Revolution? Because that would be incredible. I am here for more triple threat matches in AEW, especially for the world title. They're just not traditional, and we don't normally see them in AEW. At least to my knowledge, there haven't been that many. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's up to you, Wrestling Nation, to figure out how many triple threat matches have happened in AEW for the world title. But Hook and Joe absolutely reminded me of Mike Awesome and Spike Dudley. David and Goliath. Goliath is as Goliath can be. Although Mike Awesome in 2000 might have been as Goliath as Vader in 93. So, Joe in 2024 might not have the same intensity, but he's still damn impressive. And Hook, plucky, tough, determined, nothing to lose, and got his ass handed to him, but still looked great, still was defiant, still looked tough, and gave Joe a great match, and made Hook look great. Hook made Hook look great, and that's the best thing. Of course, Joe made Hook look better than, Hook doing it on his own, but Hook really proved himself. Hook can stand and hang with a world title match and a world champion. So I was hyped to see that match take place and how it ended up. Like I said, the Spike Dudley, Mike Awesome component of just beat down, crazy spots. Ultimately, Joe wins, but you got to respect Spike, you got to respect Hook. So I'm sure there was a little bit of a ode to old ECW in that regard. But a lot of interesting stuff coming from the end of that with the, the triple threats, in the wings potentially with Swerve, Hangman, and Samoa Joe. So right now, and I'll note this. Right now we have Sting and Darby Allin with Ric Flair in their corner versus TBA, which will be Sting's retirement match. And then we did just get Roderick Strong taking on Orange Cassidy for the International Championship. Gotta be honest, looks like Roderick Strong's going to be your new International Champion. It just seems like why wouldn't, with all the interference that could potentially happen, and, I don't know if Orange Cassidy's going to have best friends there or not, but it just seems to me that it's going to be the numbers game, and that'll be too much for Orange Cassidy to handle. Let's go to the Royal Rumble of it all. Again, we'll do the predictions next week, which should be fun. As always, the prediction shows are some of my favorite shows of the Juice Box, so stay tuned for that. So far, we've got Bayley, Nia Jax, Becky Lynch, and Bianca Belair declaring for the Women's Royal Rumble, 4 out of the 30. And then for the men, we've got Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Shinsuke Nakamura, Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, and Gunther all have been announced for the Royal Rumble, 6 out of the 30. Still under that quota of 15 by the time the show is here. So we got one more SmackDown and one more episode of Raw. Well, 2 more episodes of SmackDown and 1 more episode of Raw before Royal Rumble. So we'll figure out how many are actually announced ahead of the Rumble PLE, excuse me. But the other matches on that card, Logan Paul defending the United States title against Kevin Owens, which, stay tuned for the end of the Juice Box this week. You get to hear that KO interview from 10 years ago. And then Roman Reigns defends the undisputed Universal title against Randy Orton, AJ Styles, and LA Knight. Yeah. So that will be fun for sure. Two more things. Hard to Kill TNA this past week. Fun show. So excited that TNA's back. Ultimate X was great. Love seeing PCO and PPV. We had Nic Nemeth come out, and looks like he's going to maybe challenge Moose for the TNA title. Nic Nemeth, formerly Dolph Ziggler in TNA. He's also kind of shown up in New Japan recently. He's just going to be bounced around. He's the most wanted man. I think he's a desirable talent outside of WWE. And I think he's going to be able to work anywhere, to be honest with you. And hopefully we'll see more of him in TNA. Looking forward to the TNA resurgence here in 2024. And, of course, Jack Perry in New Japan. I've said it before. I'll say it again. And until he proves me wrong, I will stand by my statement that Jack Perry has the charisma of a penny. However, he did have a wristband that said Scapegoat and ripped up an AEW contract in the center of a New Japan ring. It's a work. So, unfortunately, it does nothing for me. But the matches could be something. So, give me some Jack Perry matches in New Japan. Give me something to sink my teeth into. And then welcome him back into the AEW fold at some point, where he may or may not have to deal with the likes of Kazuchika Okada. Let's get to that before the KO interview. Okada, apparently January 31st is the last day of his contract for New Japan, and he will not be returning. Will he be in WWE, or will he be in AEW? Seems to be AEW. For one, you would assume he would go to the Royal Rumble if he were in WWE. That'd be a perfect spot for him to debut. Unfortunately, the Royal Rumble was 4 days before his contract expires, so that would be legit tampering. Even though tampering does not apply when it's AEW, considering AEW and New Japan have a pay-per-view every year called Forbidden Door. So the door, I'm sure, is wide open for Okada to appear in AEW, and I would wager, considering some of Tony Khan's tweets over the past hour and a half, that not only will 2024 be a huge year for AEW, but not only they might get Monet, but they might get Okada as well, which, what a coup. Those are the talents that, as a hardcore fan of AEW, you would want. A huge mainstream women's star, on TV shows, has been in WWE for years. Great, a lot of great stuff coming with that talent particularly. And then Okada, a worldwide star, who's been one of the best pro wrestlers in the world for the last 5-7 years. Matches with Kenny Omega and Ospreay. Just a lot of great stuff with Okada. So if he can go to AEW, I don't see how we couldn't have more crazy and intense matches on Dynamites, Collisions. God, give me Adam Copeland versus Okada. That's something I never thought I'd say, but why not, right? So, a lot of interesting stuff this week. It's a hodgepodge. You got an AEW pay-per-view coming up in a month and a half, but the WWE prime schedule, no pun intended, Logan Paul, is next week. Next week starts off such a crazy time where everything matters more, everything has stakes. The Rumble is a huge show, and then we got the brutal Eastern Standard Time of 5 in the morning for Elimination Chamber, so that won't be fun. But then WrestleMania, the shows, the granddaddy of them all, that's going to be huge, and we will discuss potential juice box plans for WrestleMania week as we get closer to the event. But they'll be, of course, addressed here and on Twitter. As always, before we get to the main event of this show, Juicy Steen on Twitter, Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, juicysteen.podbean.com. The Juice Box on Google Podcasts and on Apple Podcasts. If you listen to it on Apple Podcasts and you go to iTunes and rate this show 5 stars, and even if you could drop a review, that would be great for the Juice Box here in 2024. But without further ado, like I said, we got predictions next week, so stay tuned for those. But right now, here is the interview from January of 2014, 10 years ago, a little college Juice Springsteen interviewing then known as Kevin Steen, now Kevin Owens, just hours before his Ring of Honor event in Pittsburgh in January of 2014. Just a throwback of an interview. It's rough. It's 6 minutes. It's not the best material, but I thought it would be in a cool way, just a nice little throwback, a trip down memory lane, the infancy of Juice in journalism. And I'm proud of it, to be quite honest with you. So I'm going to put it here, and hope you guys all enjoy it. And I will see you guys next week for the predictions episode for the Royal Rumble PLE. Who knows who will be joining me, but it's always an open juice box. So throw those straws into the box as we get this KO interview right here, right now. Hope you guys enjoy, and I will see you guys next week for another edition of the Juice Box.
All right.
What is this for? Just like you're going to write an article?
Yeah, it's for my college newspaper.
Okay.
So, all right. How have you seen Ring of Honor grow in the time you've been here?
I've been here for like 6-7 years, take away a year or two. And it's not, like if you think of when I started, Ring of Honor was always, like from the moment I started to now, it's always grown, you know? Like some companies will go through lulls and ups and downs, and while I wouldn't say that everything's been perfect for 7 years, I'd say as far as recognition, like public, you know, the public recognizing Ring of Honor as a company, it's been like exponential in the last few years, especially just due to the, you know, all the channels that Sinclair Broadcast Group brings with their, you know, their network and all that stuff. So it's really good to see it too. Everybody's been working so hard for so long, and it's grown from being kind of an underground, edgy thing to something now that's more mainstream. And, like, you know, 7 years ago when I walked down the street in Philadelphia or in North Carolina, for example, or anywhere in Chicago, I wouldn't really get recognized. But now I do. So I could tell that it's getting bigger. You know, just from that's a good clue.
Yeah.
But obviously being on TV helps a lot, too. So it's really good to see it grow.
All right. You guys have performed in Bell Vernon before, but this is your first time in the actual city.
Yeah.
How do you feel this will be different, success-wise? You think a lot of people will still come to this show more than the Bell Vernon?
I would expect it to, because it's downtown, right? And I was even pointing that out when we were driving into. I didn't know that. For some reason, I hadn't paid attention. I thought the show was in Bell Vernon tonight. I didn't know that it was in Pittsburgh.
Oh, wow.
So I was really pleasantly surprised to hear that. And I hear just the pre-sales for the show, like the tickets that have already been sold before the show, are way better than Bell Vernon ever was, because I think, you know, it's easier access, and it's also a nicer building, and it's, you know, like everybody wants to spend an evening. Like
exactly.
You don't want to spend your Saturday night in a crappy building. Not that Bell Vernon was crappy, but it wasn't great. This is a really nice building. It's just more pleasant to come to a nicer building, so that helps.
In addition to that, as you know, obviously you have to. The Royal Rumble is tomorrow night, also in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So Pittsburgh not only gets Royal Rumble, but it gets Ring of Honor inside the city for the first time. So do you think it'll bring collectively a lot of fans and success, revenue, et cetera, and to bring more wrestling events here in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. As far as Ring of Honor is concerned, I feel like this is a big opportunity for. You know, we've been to Bell Vernon, and it was fine, and we had a decent crowd every time we've been there. But now I feel like it's going to be a way bigger crowd. A lot of it has to do, I'm sure, with the fact that Royal Rumble is here the next night, and people are just, you know, in a wrestling mood for that weekend. But, you know, there might be a lot of first-timers to the show tonight. It's our job to make sure they come back next time. But I think that's a big opportunity, and it's not one that, you know, it's an opportunity that usually Ring of Honor like raises the occasion for, and, you know, very rarely will some. I've been here for 7 years, and I've never heard a fan complaining when they left the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's, you know, in a way, it is. You know, the added attraction of the Royal Rumble being in town helps, but I think that it's up to us to make sure people come back next time, and I'm not worried. I'm sure we'll be successful at that.
All right. Now, as a wrestling fan yourself, if you were looking at this as a wrestling weekend, what show would you go to? Would you go to one, the other, or both?
I'd definitely go to both. I am going to both. I'm performing on one, but I'm going to the Rumble tomorrow because I have a lot of friends there, and you know, why wouldn't I? I've never seen one live, and you know, it's always been a thing. Even when I was a kid, I was a WWE fan, and they did WrestleMania in Toronto, they did Raw in Montreal, and SmackDown in Ottawa, and I went to all three because, I don't know, I think, especially Ring of Honor fans, the people that are Ring of Honor fans are usually very passionate about wrestling, so I assume that a lot of people that are going to be here tonight are going to be at the Rumble tomorrow, because that's just how wrestling fans are, I think, especially the wrestling fans that are Ring of Honor fans. They, I tend to think that Ring of Honor fans take wrestling not more seriously, but they're very passionate about it. So, if there's two big events in your city or within driving distance, just getting here, we were on planes with some fans that were coming in just for the weekend that lived in New York or even in Canada. That's all part of it,
And this is my last question. I thought I'd throw this in there. I thought it would be interesting. Have you been keeping up with your former partner El Generico and Sami Zayn in WWE NXT?
I've met Sami Zayn a handful of times. I have been keeping up with Generico in Mexico, and he's doing all right. Sami Zayn, he's actually very proud of Sami Zayn. I guess they had some relationship I wasn't aware of. I guess Generico maybe trained Sami Zayn. That's what he's trying to tell me through his broken English. Obviously, you could see the influence there, but I've been watching Sami Zayn, and he's obviously very talented at what he does. I'm sure he'll be very successful, and if I had known him 10 years ago, I probably would have always thought that he would be this successful. So,
in addition to that, just follow up, do you think he'll eventually get called up, and if he does, which I think he would he flourish on the main roster?
Yeah, yes to both. I mean, he already, when WWE came to Montreal for a house show back in September, they brought him just for that house show because it's his hometown, but he was on the whole loop with the whole, he did all the house shows on the TVs, and I had never really heard of them doing that with somebody. And I think he did very well, and he even went to Abu Dhabi and stuff like that. So I think people are already getting people are already taking notice of him, and it's just going to keep going. And like I said, he's very talented, and he learned from the best. So I'm sure the spirit of Generico will lead him to some very good things.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate it
No problem, man.
infinitely. This is a great experience. So
cool, man.
Thanks a lot.
No problem.
That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.